Hello and welcome to HMS TechTalks. Security is getting increasingly important as more and more machines are getting hooked up to the internet. There's no doubt that the aspect of hooking up things to the internet and making them connected is a great benefit. You can increase your sustainability, your productivity with machines, but of course you're also subject to security risks. What can we do about that? How can we cater for that? That's what we're going to talk about in today's Tech Talk together with James Kime, Product Manager here at HMS. Welcome, James.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
First of all, there's no doubt that we are moving towards a more connected industry, but what are the security risks that we subject us to when that happens?
Well, when you have anything that's connected to the outside world, then suddenly you make what they call an attack vector, where something can come in and make a change on your system, and then it creates a real risk to systems, because suddenly you made a way to get into it. We look at it as a nice way to work with the machine to make sure it's running and maintaining, but people with malicious intent can do all sorts of terrible things if it's not done correctly.
And this is not your PC they were accessing. It could be something that's hazardous to people.
Absolutely. When you think about what is the potential things that are connected now, we're not talking about, like your average just like desktop working machine. We're talking about big machinery. We're talking about water treatment plants, power generation stations. Really big and critical infrastructure pieces of equipment.
Right. You've been working with connectivity for machines for a long time. When you meet customers, what are their fears and what are the biggest concerns that you hear when it comes to security and internet connection for machines?
Absolutely. I think the number one is they're afraid that someone's going to get access, when they shouldn't have that access. That's the number one concern. I think everything else kind of almost pales to the comparison of just someone who gets in that's not allowed. Yeah. But it's become almost like a conversation you have with the end customer, and it depends on who you're talking to at the end customer site, because you have the different players. You have the person who's installing the equipment, who's just like their job is to make sure it always keeps running. Like they're at a factory, they want the factory line to run. But then you have the IT department, whose job it is to make sure that everything's secure and safe. And the IT department hates everything about remote access. It goes against the very nature of what they do.
Right, but you still have to have these things connected, because there's so many gains when it comes to productivity that you have to cater for, and there's also all these sustainability demands that companies have to cater for now.
Absolutely. Think of a factory line like running in a modern world. A minute of downtime you can calculate in a huge amount of income. They can't afford to have these things go down anymore. And to do that, you can't have an expert on every machine right there standing next to the machine. So this is where this remote connectivity becomes really crucial for modern worlds.
Yeah. So there's no doubt that it's needed, although it is also a risk, of course. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to actually get connected technically in a bit. But first, security is not only the technology of having a secure connection. It's also a process. You need to have it in the backbone of the manufacturing company that's manufacturing the security or the access product. So tell us more about that process.
This is a really good point. One of the things that you get asked a lot. People come to me like, "Are you certified for this protocol or this protocol?" And they think that that's all it means to be secure, but it's not. It's like you said, it's a process. Security is like a partnership between the person who installs the machine and maintains the machine and the people who are surrounding the machine. And you have to know how the machine is being used and have plans for when things go wrong, how you're going to deal with it. And it's a constant effort. It's not a install one day and then I'm good for 10 years. It's install one day and come back a month later and update it.
Right. So you're really entering a partnership with someone who supplies these remote access.
Absolutely.
So you need to work with a trusted player. But let's talk a little bit about the technology involved. If we talk about the Cozy Plus, which is the HMS remote access product, could you mention a few things about the actual technical security features that's there?
When you talk about products or components into a system, right? You need to make sure that they're secure in and of themselves. So this is where you have things like IEC 62443, which it has many parts of it, but we talk about this one called 4-2, which is what requirements are there in a piece of equipment to make sure it's secure, to say, hey, if you have this, you're secure. And these include things like making sure that it has the right level of encryption and it has the right level of policies to make sure that you can't, say, set a password that's like 123, 123, or things like this. Then you also have to have really hardware requirements. Like, you can't just take any piece of hardware and make it secure. It actually has to have built into it the ability to be secure. And this is where you have what's called a secure chip, which gives you like this special level of encryption that you can't get with just plain software.
Okay. So IEC 62443, it's a framework that states what security is available in the...
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I just kind of threw that out there, but it's a huge, what do you say, it's a specification on what is security, and it covers all concepts of it. And it starts off with kind of in the policies of what is a secure installation, and then what it means to add components in the secure installation, and what it means to maintain security in your installation. So it's kind of become the standard for what we're deciding as a secure environment.
Right, I see. How does IEC 62443 compare to the ISO 27001 that you also hear a lot about in security talks?
Yeah, I mean, ISO 27001 is more of comes from the IT world, and what it really means is you always know what you're going to do. You have a process for everything. It's a really process-oriented specification. It means that if event A happens, then here's your event A plan for you're going to proceed. So you have a huge number of predetermined paths, and then you make sure that no matter what happens, you're not caught, unaware or unready.
All right. So while the ISO is getting more for the IT part, the IEC 62443 is more towards the industry. Can you say that? Well,
I mean, yeah. Think about it as more as the ISO standard is more about how you install the thing into the system and how you manage where it's at, and then the IEC 4-2 is what is the equipment and how it's being managed.
Okay. Another thing that you can work with when it comes to improving security is to work with the external agency that can kind of test and safeguard that it has the highest security standards. Tell us more about how HMS has worked with that.
Well, I mean, it's more than just can, you have to. Because, I mean, to assume that you're safe and have all the security is probably the first step to going wrong. You need to have constant third-party opinions and monitoring to make sure that stuff is correct. Because you work very hard yourself, but then you give it to someone else, and they always find something. Always, every time. And then you're like, oh, yeah, didn't see that. So then working with companies, we work with a company named Naviso, and they will take our stuff, and they constantly will pull it apart and check it and make sure it's correct, and really give us this outside opinion. And then we take their feedback, we make it better, and then rinse and repeat.
Right. Once again, this partnership.
Yes, always a partnership.
So finally, as we mentioned, you've been working with this for a long time. What advice would you give to people who are thinking about hooking up their machines and getting them connected for the first time?
Well, it's kind of a funny question when you think about it. Like, what does it mean to even hook up a machine anymore? I mean, when you look at like how machines used to be traditionally hooked up, you have you ever heard of something called the Purdue model?
No.
Okay. Well, in a traditional factory setup, you have layers, and this is how IT functions. I mean, Purdue model was like how you set up an installation, and everything has on the lowest level you have, say, like a machine on the factory floor, and then above that you have some over controller that watches the machines, and above that you have the next layer, which maybe is your control room or something that's watching the whole factory, and then you have the IT systems, and everything's a layer that goes up. And then suddenly here we come along and we make a device that's designed to take a factory machine and bypass every layer and come right to the top. And it's been this system, this kind of rule of thumb for years that you never connect above a layer, everything's a layer. And now we're connecting things up. And you have to be very careful about how you go about doing that. Because, if you don't connect it correctly, then you've completely nullified the whole security of the whole system with one little setup. So I mean, this comes to then, I guess, going back to your question, like what does it mean to connect one device? It means that you need to think of this device as its own little isolated, secure zone itself. And everything around one piece of equipment in a factory needs to be safe and secure. And it needs to have a kind of a barrier between it and other things, so you can't get out from it. So everything is limited to one side. So theoretically, if it does get hacked, that's the only thing that gets hacked. You stop the infection, so to speak, at the site. And this is where you have to make sure that data flows, typically on a high secure site, data only flows out, never in. Like in wastewater treatment plants, what data coming in is potentially hazardous. So if you have a high risk, data only goes out.
Right, okay.
Rules like this.
So securing these smaller snippets inside the factory.
Absolutely.
That is
like little bastions or castles or whatever inside. Right. And then that's how you set up a modern factory. You have to progress with how times are changing. Because we know the benefits, like we mentioned before. You need this machine to run. You can't let it die. And if the machine needs to run, well, then we have to make concessions on how it's going to work.
Exactly, and as you said, getting back to this trusted partnership, that you need to work with someone who has security experience and knows about it if you are going to subject to these risks that are always there when you hook up.
Well, I mean, it's crucial. Like, take for example, have you heard of like NIS2 and this is a standard that's come out now. Well, there's NIS and there's NIS2, which is basically saying what does it mean to have a secure site? What is a secure infrastructure? And it's changing everything. Like right now, if you do water treatment, then you're going to have all this additional reporting, these additional secures and security, and to make sure that you can meet these needs. I mean, there's a whole new level of things you have to take into account that you didn't used to have to think about anymore, and now it's required, and you don't know what these are. I mean, this too is this huge long document, but the document doesn't say what it means to be secure. It just says be secure. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting. So then suddenly you need someone who you can work with who explains what that is, and that's where like IEC 6243 comes in. It says, hey, this is what it means to be secure, and then what factory person knows this specification? So partners are everything. Having trusted people to work with is how you're going to solve these problems.
Interesting indeed. So lots of things to learn, lots of things to take in when it comes to security. But James, thanks very much to talking about the security issues. And if you want to know more about security, there's a lot of material available on our website, hmsnetworks.com, so don't miss that. Otherwise, thanks very much for talking to us, James.
Pleasure.
Thank you.